EPAWA Weather Consulting, headquartered in Worth Whitehall, Pennsylvania. This is Weather Weeklies, an informative video of the ins and outs of weather that affect you most in the EPAWA coverage area. The thoughts and opinions expressed in this video are those of the forecaster alone and may not reflect those of the staff of EPAWA Weather Consulting LLC as a whole, nor its constituents. Now, without further ado, here is meteorologist Bobby Martrich with Weather Weeklies.
Good Sunday morning to you. Another edition of Weather Weeklies for Sunday, January 26th. It is Championship Sunday for both the NFC and AFC. So you know what I'll be doing today. I got my, where's it at? There it is. My Eagles mug there. Go Birds. So today we are going to go over the pattern that we're heading into in February. There has been a lot of speculation in either direction of whether it would be torchy and warmer or would it remain colder. And if you noticed in our long-range outlooks that we do every single Friday that we have been slowly adjusting downward. And that is because of the consistency of the European guidance that has been very steadfast in showing that it is going to be at least leaning slightly below average. Not during that first week, but once we get past the first week of February, it maintains the colder than average look. So we're going to start off with the snowfall year to date. And most locations have a little bit more snow now because of that system that we had about a week ago. And there's two locations that are actually above average for where you should be to this date of the year. Okay, well, that is Allentown, Lehigh Valley area, not by much, by 0.4. It's ahead slightly. And Scranton, Wilkes-Barre is still above average there as well, but that is a lot in large part due to that very early before the season started in November, a week before Thanksgiving, a big snowstorm that hit up there that's really carried them so far. There's been a lot of nickel and diming since then. But the rest of the area here, Harrisburg, very close to average. You're barely red here. So this is color-coded for red. If you're below, it's in red, and they're very barely. So it's almost average there in Harrisburg. The rest of the area is at least below average, as you can see to this point of the year. Okay, so this is what we have thus far. This is what we're expecting in the month of January and February. January is... At most of these locations here, if not all, are going to finish below average for the month. Slightly below average, but below average nevertheless. It's very interesting because the January precipitation, you take quantitative precipitation and turn that into snow, right? Allentown, for example, I saw this yesterday, it has 0.65 inches of liquid equivalent for the entire month, which is close to a record low for January, okay? 0.65 inches. And it still produced 8.6 inches of snow. So that speaks to the snow ratios that we had in some of those events that we had. Just very high, fluffy stuff. It's not a lot of moisture content, but it piles up quicker, right? And that's the case at many locations that had snow this month. And then February, you see, is our peak month in terms of climatological average snowfall. Okay, so this is our busiest month from a climatological standpoint. Will it be busy in February? I think we have an opportunity to. Well, there's still some questions there about how much of it is going to be snow, how much is going to be ice. We're going to start talking about a little bit more ice this month because of the pattern we're heading into that I'll discuss in today's video. Here's our monthly projections that we put in there for Friday. We don't have March listed yet. That will come once we turn the calendar into February so we can do the February-March projections. So we still have January on here since we're still in January. And these are very high projections of what we have because obviously it's the end of the month. Not much is going to change. We can see the next 5 days. And here is we're finishing January with below average, 3 to 5 degrees below average, solidly below average precipitation, near to slightly below average snowfall. And again, some areas like around the Lehigh Valley are going to be closer to average than others, but there's going to be some areas that are just not going to make it this month. For February, this has been the biggest change. This right here, this is started off near to slightly above average. Then last week, the week before this one, we had it back to near average, and now it's near to slightly below. We're kind of going in the other direction and favoring the colder side of the needle. This is not very much colder. This is not like January where -3 to -5. It's 0 to -2. So that's near to slightly below average, which means it's basically leaning on that side of the zero needle, basically. But another thing that we've maintained is slightly above average precipitation, and we're going to keep, for now, the February snowfall outlook near average because, again, we're going to have some mixing events involved with this. This is not going to be just straight snow, and like we had this kind of pattern slightly above average in January with these kind of temperatures below average. You would have had one heck of a month, but we just didn't have that. So That's why we had the precipitation lacking is what dealt us a blow there. But this is important going into the slightly above average precipitation is very important because we have to start thinking about going into spring. You don't want to go into spring with these kind of deficits that we've been carrying since the fall, and really haven't had a turnaround in the precipitation department yet. We do think that February is going to be slightly above average. We'll start eating into that, at least setting us up for going into spring not as quite as dry as it's been. All right, so now why is this change? What made us change our mind here? Well, there's two different camps that we talked about with the GFS camp expecting the tropical forcing to go into the maritime continent. It has backed off that idea, but it's still doing something where it brings it into the Western Pacific phases of phase 6 here as we get into deeper into February. But before, this had us going into phase 3 like it's doing now, but going into 4 and 5 and then 6 going like this, right? So it's backed off that considerably, okay? So we've seen that trend away from that. Now it's still doing something where it reemerges it here in phase 6 and keeps in there for a while, which is a mild phase no matter what you look at. So this is why it's showing these milder looks on the GFS ensemble and has been continuing to show that. European ensemble on the right takes it through phase 3 and then collapses it in the circle of death, keeps it there the entire time, all the way through February, just kind of sits and spins out here, but never reemerges into any of these phases. So in this case, where it comes from is important, okay? And in phase 3, I'll show you in a second, phase 3 in January is a little bit milder, right? So if you get into phase 3 in February, it is not a mild pattern. Okay, so if it's coming from phase 3 and just sitting the circle of death, the null phase in the middle, the phase 3 effects will continue longer because of where it comes from is important. If it came from a warm phase and then went to the circle of death, then obviously you're going to be hanging on the warmth a little bit longer and it'd be torchy. There's so many minuscule changes with this Madden-Julian oscillation that just a slight difference or the projections are slightly off in nearer term or long term, it is going to have big implications on how February plays out. CFS, which was married to the GFS for so long, is now married to the European ensemble. Okay, so it's gone away from its own. This is an American model too. CFS has been pretty good with the tropical forcing this year, and it also expects phase 3 right in the circle of death. It just sits here and hangs out, doesn't go out into phase 6 like the GFS shows. So we're kind of leaning against that idea that this is trying to suggest in the GFS where it's going to phase 6 for now. Doesn't mean it can't. So we're just continue to monitor that. What we mean by phase 3? Well, phase 3 is out here. This is the visible IR, or this is the IR imagery of convection, and you can see phase phase right here. And you see where the convection is. It's right there. Okay, so that's where your phase 3 forcing is. If it was phase 4, it would be out here. Phase 5 is out here. Okay, so it's this is phase 3 right here, right there. That's phase 3. This is phase 4. This is phase 5 to the right of it. So all the best convection is right there in phase 3. We know that to be true currently, right? Now let me get rid of this. Okay, but you notice where everything's going. It's not moving toward the maritime continent, phase 4 is 5. It's moving away from it. It's moving in this direction, from east to west. Everything along and this is the trade winds that are doing this, is moving everything away from the maritime continent. So there's really no reason to believe that we will go into phase 4 at this point. There's no indication of that and this is the actual, this isn't a model. This is actual infrared satellite. So we can see this globally, obviously, on a global scale. But we can see what it's doing, so we can infer that GFS short term going into phase 4 is probably not happening like it was suggesting for literally weeks, and it was giving us fits of what are we going to do here for February, because it's really one side or the other. It's either going to be torchy or it's going to be leaning colder still. So we are starting to back down from that milder look. Now it will start off the month milder than average a couple of those days in early February, especially between the 2nd and 4th, and that is because this is what a phase 3 in January. We're in phase 3 now. So phase 3 actually was achieved right around the 20th or so. So you have a 7 to 10 day lag time for that to affect our sensible weather, and it will begin doing so once we get into early February. So that is why you're going to get a little bit of a milder pattern, as you can see here, from a January negative ENSO phase 3, which is what we are in. We're in a La Nina. And then once we get into February, that pattern changes. That pattern changes considerably. We now have a negative EPO coming in here. You have more of a gradient pattern, gradient overrunning pattern like this, and you still have the warmth down here in the south central U.S. So that gradient, you have storms moving along that track there, moving along this track. This is the storm track right here, right along that gradient. Okay, but if we could stay on the colder side of this right here, the colder side of that, we could have, obviously some snow, some mix events and things like that. I think that's what we're going to be getting into, especially as we get into February. Okay, here's an example of what I mean by the overrunning pattern. This is just this is not to be used for specifics, and this is the actual European model that ran last night, and this is going all the way out to about the end of the first week of January, February, into the first week of February. But the whole idea here is with this pattern, which is this right here, you have a big high pressure sitting up here, big H. You put a big H, all right? That's over the top, and the gradient is like this, right? So that's what this is doing. That's what this is showing here on the European model last night that ran, is you got a big high pressure sitting up here over the top, supplying your cold air, and then you have a storm moving into this, and you have basically a warm front that's situated like this. So far north of the front there, you get snow. Along the frontal boundary, you get some kind of wintry mix, whether it be freezing rain, sleet, that kind of thing. And further south of the boundary, when you get down here, it is just rain. So where that gradient sets up is going to be important. And we have to look to what is going to bring in the cold air at this point, because and I think it's really going to be the EPO that does it, okay? And we get out here in that same time frame, you can see clearly we have a negative EPO up here, and this is supplying a cross-polar flow, so we can get enough of that. So when you get these gradient storms coming in here like this, here's those gradient storms, as long as the boundary keeps it further south, and then we could have, when these systems run into that or run along that boundary, we could be on the colder side of that, and it would be more wintry, whether that's snow or mix or both, rain, all those things could enter the equation. So these are going to be on a storm-by-storm basis. But one thing we're more confident in is that we are going to be in a more active pattern. So it won't take long to see. It won't be waiting a week to 10 days to see in between rain events or snow events or whatever we have. We'll have other opportunities. If one doesn't work out, you might have a couple days later where it does, okay? So I think that's kind of the pattern we're heading into, and part of that, again, is the Eastern Pacific Oscillation, a return to the negative side. We're going to have this little spike right in here in the early February, and that's why we're going to have those couple days that, especially between the 2nd and 4th, I think that are going to have above average temperatures, slightly above, but above average nevertheless, and then it just goes down from here. You see that? And it stays negative. So it's a return of the negative Eastern Pacific Oscillation to get you the cross-polar flow and get you enough cold air to work with. All right, that's the whole idea. And you can see that here on the temperature trends. Here's that warm air coming in between the 2nd and 4th. And then after that, you get generally into the slightly below average temperatures as they head toward the beginning of the 2nd week of February. I think if you have any storm signals per se, it's going to be end of the 1st week of February, beginning of the 2nd week of February, and moving forward. I don't think you're doing anything before that, other than maybe some wintry mess at the onset of something here on next Saturday and Sunday. We'll see. I'll follow that in the daily forecast videos. But here is what the average temperatures are. If we did break this down as at Allentown Lehigh Valley International Airport, which is our centermost point of our coverage region, just to give you an idea. And it doesn't matter where I pick. I could have picked anywhere within our region would have been doing the same thing in terms of relative to average. So we're kind of like slightly below or maybe hanging near average all the way through the end of this month and the beginning of February, right? And then you have this little bit of a slightly above average period here between the 2nd and 4th. And then right after that, you see after that we are kind of slightly below average this entire time. We're doing this right here, and that's in large part to the EPO. So if we get temperatures in here like this and that gradient nearby, you can get winter storms out of this. And we are confident that we are going to turn into a wetter pattern heading into February, which is a good thing. Here's what the extended ensembles have for the entire month. This is a 30-day anomaly of precipitation here on the GFS ensemble, extended ensemble, and it has the entire month more than an inch. That's higher than we project. We have between 0 and +1. Slightly above average here in February as a whole. This is actually suggesting more like 1 to 1.5, or maybe even more than that above average, which would be great. European ensemble, not so quite as enthused. It's within our projection of 0 to 1. Most of these areas here are like, 0.6, 0.7, something like that above average. So we are heading wetter, and pretty much everything across the board has been expecting that, and it still is. It hasn't changed. We're not expecting this to change as far as the precipitation part of it. Which, listen, if we have any precipitation, I don't care what form it's in, it is desperately needed, and it's going to set us up in spring to for things to grow. We need this to start thinking about that. I know a lot of you are like, well, I need my snow. Okay, but we'll take it in any form we can get at this point because we certainly need it. And if we can get above average precipitation in whatever form that comes in, it would be a blessing. Now, here is the extended ensemble pattern. This is what I was talking about, what we're leaning with the European ensemble. Being a little bit more aggressive with this. There's that early month warmth, and then the rest of the month, this goes all the way through the end of February, still showing at least slightly below average temperatures settling in for much of the remainder of the month. But keep in mind, like I showed you on here, this goes through February 11th on the scale, starting from today. The average high there in Allentown is 38 today. It goes up to 41 already by February 11th, and that keeps going even further. So we're going back up again. We are now at annual climatological minimums everywhere across our region. This is the lowest temperature you'll see as terms of average high for the entire year at this particular location. But you see it already goes up to here, and we're already 3 degrees higher in terms of average temperatures by the time we get to February 11th, which is going to keep going from there. So it's going to be tougher with time, but we've had some big storms already in the month of February, and that certainly can happen. And again, climatologically speaking, it is one of our snowiest months. Actually, it is our snowiest month of the entire year. So it doesn't always produce, but some years it does, and some years it does, in a big way. Now, is this a pattern, this overrunning pattern that I'm talking about? Is this something that's going to be conducive for big storms here, like big monster blizzards? Probably not. But these overrunning events, if it can be quite juicy sometimes, and they can quickly dump a lot of snow in just a short amount of time when you have overriding cold air at the surface and then warm air overriding that. If you're in one of these areas that remain all snow for these, you can get some bigger storms out of that, and we've had plenty of those. The day my son was born, on February 5th 2001, we had one of these overrunning events, and it ended up being 17 inches of snow. So it can happen. It's just, we have to have it. It's going to depend on individual storms. And if one doesn't work out, you're only have to wait maybe a couple days later and you have something else hitting, because it's going to be a frequent pattern because everything's riding that boundary. And if that boundary stays there, depending where it is going to determine whether we have rain, snow, or a wintry mix, or maybe a combination thereof. So just something we're going to be looking forward to in the month of February. I do think, I don't want to really tackle March yet because, again, we have enough trouble with February right now. Again, we're leaning on the colder side of average, but it doesn't mean it's necessarily a guarantee. This is still a probabilistic expectation. When we do long range, it's probabilistic. It's not deterministic, even though many people think it should be. It's not. So it's just our best assessment of what we think is going to happen. We've been slowly kind of backing off from that warmer temperatures outside of the first couple days in the first week of February. So in summary, our mild temperatures, we'll have the milder temperatures on a few days within the first week of February, then slightly below average during week 2. I do think that's mainly like the 2nd to 4th time frame, like I showed you on that graphic. We're citing the colder overall outlook for February as a whole, but only very slightly so. Nothing crazy. Nothing like this month. We're well below average and favoring wetter than average conditions. So, again, we'll have opportunities for more snow, but it's going to depend on where that boundary sets up and where that gradient is. And winter storm signals are more likely to wait until the 2nd week of February and beyond. I really don't see a whole lot before then. So all of our previous winter storm signals have either missed, or the ones that we had listed for late month, those are probably not happening. We're probably looking at once we get to the 2nd week of February for anything like that will occur. Not necessarily a big blockbuster storm. We'll see. We'll take them case by case, but there will be some opportunities, multiple opportunities for rain, snow, sleet, freezing rain, all that stuff. We're going to have a busy month, I think, trying to track this and make sure. A lot of headaches, a lot of coffee, a lot of late night coffee for me. So that is going to be it for this week of Weather Weeklies. We're going to go through this at 1 week at a time, because it's going to be very volatile in the month of February, I think, and we'll have a busy month and a lot to talk about. I had to go back to the old format, the regular format today, because we don't have any short-term storms to talk about, but that could be changing as we head into February. I will see you again next week. Take care.